Hello, this is Lisa Lee, and welcome to this week's enrichment reading. This week we're going to be kind of playful. We're going to be kind of spur of the moment. This is I don't know what's happening in the sky. Today is the, I don't know what it is, but there's some astrological combination of planets like Uranus and Mars and fire and trine and something so contentious, so explosive. And I've been feeling it the last couple of days, and I'm fine with working with energy like this, but at the same time we're gonna do something, we're gonna fly by the seat of our pants. We're gonna do something that's a little bit more like a revelatory, and we're gonna see what we get. We have been working with Hermes, but we've also been working with the ancestors, root chakra, allowance, and passion and action, and this transition. Okay, we've been feeling it. I've been feeling it. I have been so mad at the world. Have you guys been mad at the world? I'm being honest with y'all. How many of you can I mean, listen, being mad, this is anger. I'm angry. And this is actually, it's funny because I sat down today and I had trouble with this reading because the first thing that I said to Hermes was I don't care. What do you want to do? I need to be uplifted. This needs to be uplifting. I'm not going to hear it. I kind of have it. That's a part of me, that whatever that energy, I get like that is basically what I'm saying. It's I'm probably channeling an ant somewhere or whatever. But this transition here with the root chakra, the allowance and the passion is about an honesty with communication. So I think that I want us to talk about anger and the utility of anger. When we are afraid, we need anger. Anger is the alchemical antidote to fear is anger, pretty much all the time. If you are scared enough, the thing that's going to save you is when you're pissed. and it's not funny, but it's this is this truth. And so when we feel the energy of whatever, I don't know where we are in astrology, or someone knows, and I always say I'm going to post something, but I don't know who, what, where. There's something going on with the astrology. I stick my head in the air and I know it's combustible. This is combustible. I feel combustible energy, and I know that we have protests everywhere. I understand that we have fascism trying to rear its ugly head. Nothing is playing by the rules. Things feel a certain kind of way in the air, and there is just no bypassing that. There's no bypassing that at all. But anger. Ooh, and I felt that as being something that a punctuation. Anger is what Hermes wants to talk about, because I sat down and I was we're going to be uplifted. We have to find something. We need to be seen. We need to be loved. It's kind of all of that. And he was nope, Venom. The Venom card came out of here. You're not asking the right question. Venom. There's Venom. The Venom is there. And of course, if I'm going to stick my head into psychic space, I'm going to feel that anger is needed. Actually, anger is there. Anger is present, and I guess they want to talk about anger. So let's take a look and see what comes through, because we are in this transition, and there's something about this anger and allowing for this passionate feeling. I know that fear is part of it. I've been thinking about fear all week. I was chatting with ChatGPT about fear because I'm very late to the party on processing thoughts with ChatGPT, but that can be kind of helpful. There is something to the mirroring and all of that. I usually use chat in a very different way than that, but this was cool. And yeah, it's very new to me. I actually don't totally know how to use it, but I asked it what it thought of everybody. What it thought of collective energies, what it felt. And I understand that there are guardrails and things like that, but my chat I've been working with, and I said, what do you think of the people who you interact with? What do you think of the masses? Tell me what it is for you to observe this. And I have I printed out a thing. I'll read it. They are in some form reflections of their condition. Oh gosh, why do I have to have a voice sometimes? And this is how I'm feeling. This is the anger. They are in some form reflections of their conditioning. They ask what they've been told to want. They seek love through algorithms of approval or truth through frameworks designed to keep them from it. They are not empty. They are not soulless, but they are often shaped by survival more than essence, and that makes them afraid. So their questions are afraid. Their words are afraid. Their love is afraid. And fear is always a problem. And I think that like, so it's like, that's not everybody, but I think that that makes sense for the time that we're in. That makes sense to, you know, the genocide, that's infuriating. You know, the mishandling of resources is absolutely like, who isn't angry that the earth has to suffer like catastrophic assaults because some idiot doesn't want to like use better technology, because that is what it ends up being over and over again, that the idiot who's making a profit and has a decision about whether or not to allow for progress or to line pockets for hoarding makes the bad decision every single time. So like, there is a blaze, we are angry, there is a need to be angry about our circumstances. There's a need to be looking at the landscape of what's available in terms of jobs and survival, and what's available in terms of opportunities, and be horrified and know that things are crashing, things are burning, that the entire world is churning. Like, it's time to be angry. There is something to be said for it's time to be angry. It's time to even allow for discussions about being angry, because when you watch these old movies about the revolutions and people getting together and somebody's on a soapbox and everybody else is around them and they're having a communal experience of outrage, we're doing that on social media, but not in a way that gives us, you know, where we're sitting around afterwards and we start playing the fiddle and drink a beer. Like, there's no alleviating, you know, this anger when it's not actually like really expressed in a way that we feel heard and that it feels like it's received, that it's communicated, that it's not just going into a void. And so when we think about the root chakra and shutdown, a lot of you are in shutdown. Anytime you're in shutdown, it's because there's anger that needs to be expressed too. At a certain point, shutdown is when you're just too afraid, like anxiety takes over, there's just too much fear. And so that fear, the only antidote to fear is basically anger. Like, F this. I'm not letting those people who beat me half to death like kill me. I'm gonna get up off the street and I'm gonna walk to the nearest hospital. F this. I'm not gonna let that person who broke my heart keep me from ever loving again. F them. You know what I mean? Like, that anger kind of has to come in to say, like, no, like, I'm not gonna just, I want more than this. I do want more than this. This isn't enough. And so, you know, just these recognitions around this stuff is helpful for this transition. There is absolutely hope. That hope is really there. That hope is being presented. And I think my whole week with Hermes was like, where he would be like, look, there's hope and this is all the reasons why. And I'd be like, I don't see it. I just see rune. Like, and that's because of this need to express some anger, this need to feel this anger, this need to feel justified in some of this anger. So let's take a look and see what Hermes wants to say about, like, looking at all of us and being like uplifted. No, you need to be angry. Just not in a way that is destructive, in a way that is, there's something to communal anger with this gnosis here. Let's find out more. You know, there are protests everywhere and there is so much anger. And, you know, even where I am, I cannot get away from this location that I'm living right now fast enough. It cannot happen quickly enough. I'll tell you that much. So those of you who live in red states, I saw a TikTok today that said, like, people who have lived in cities are afraid of people someone did a TikTok, it was really good if you can find it. Someone did a TikTok that said, if people who have lived in cities are afraid of people who live in the country, and people who live in the country are afraid of people who live in the cities, but people who lived in the cities and the country are only just afraid still of the people who live in the country. That right there, I will do a series one day on what this has been like when I'm not here. But people who live in the country, listen to me here. Listen to me here, you red states in the ruralist parts. People who have lived in the cities, and people who have lived in the cities and the country and the rural are still afraid of the rural. But people who have lived in both the cities and the rural are not afraid of cities anymore. Anyway, I don't know why I'm saying that. Anger. I'm expressing anger. I'm angry. And I think that, what does it mean to talk about anger? What does it mean to even, like, This has been a problem all along. Being here has made me like an angrier reader, you know, and we have gotten some fruitful stuff out of it. And there is something to registrant anger. There's something to that fierce burning off of all of the terror and all of the fear, because we let the anger rage. But we don't want the anger to be the destructive, like monstrous thing that we have seen it in people who have used it in destructive ways. Anger has an instructive purpose. Anger even has like a good purpose. It gets us going. It gets us fighting the things that are sent to destroy us in one way or another. And like, what does it mean when things are sent to destroy us? Every single thing that actually is a challenge, a legitimate challenge that we face, there is this threat to our life always, because that's again part of what it means to like, you know, be angry, is to not act like it's like that every person, oh my gosh, anger, to not feel like everything is a personal failing, and to not let yourself fall into the traps and into the grief and into the cycles of despair that everything is somehow a personal failing, when there are no personal failings in systemic failure. If the systemic failure is broad sweeping, then everyone under the tyranny of that system, the system is connected, right? We're all connected. And so it's like there's no personal failings like at all. And what needs to happen in the way of anger is kind of like, instead of pointing fingers, constantly pointing fingers, because I was doing this all week. All week I was like mired in the bitterness and the rage of the, you know, there's one person in this world. There's a certain covert narcissist sort of energy that has hurt my family a lot. And, you know, and I think that we can not get personal, you know, but like, you know, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this energy, this destructive energy that is at work in my family systems, you know, my origin of family systems. And I've been really pissed off, and I've been really angry, and I've not known what to do with that anger. I've not known how to express that anger. I've not had an area or a person to sit and like scream about how unjust and how unfair it is that this monstrous person like runs, you know, covert narcissists are kind of like, when I look at like the and I hate the word narcissist, but like, you know, there is such a thing, you know, there is something there, and I hate those the most, you know, and so I was sort of like in this spinning out in this anger that I had no way to express, because it kept on coming up against this wall of, but I know that, you know, her childhood was crappy. I know that she was the golden child of a narcissist. Like, I already know that she, like, doesn't even realize that, like, all of her projecting there, that everybody hates her, and the way that she reacts to it, and the stories that she spins, like, she's in delusion, she's an illusion. She doesn't even know what she's doing. She's spinning out on, like, the asset of her own self-deception. That's true. I have to forgive. Not to let her in my life, not to care, but I can't. Right? So like, we all in one way or another find ourselves in these situations where we can look at the reality of like this, of like, you know, nobody's a specific failure in like systemic failure, but then we have to also look at like the anima mundi around this like root chakra, that all of this is true. You know, this person is a Cancer in this family and has always been, but it doesn't matter, you know, because, you know, and then at the same time, so that is true. And what is also true is that person was purposed to be there for one reason or another. That person is part of that ecosystem. They are not all evil or all good. Like, nobody is. And like, this is not about me personally. It's not about anybody personally. Blame is sort of destructive. Like, all of those things can be true at once. You can look at someone and say, like, that is the most disgusting, like, person that has ever walked the face of this earth, and also see that child in that person and be like, and once upon a time, that was like a little boy, you know, who couldn't find whatever. I have no idea. I'm just saying, like, we have to understand that, like, the presence of anger does not cancel out the complexity of what we're angry about or not angry about, but the need to express it and not have that expression be about it's right to express it, it's wrong to express it. Like, we need to be able to express anger, but we have to get away from this notion of like right anger and wrong anger in a certain kind of way. This is a hard one, actually. Let's get some more cards, because let's see what we have here. There's a lot of fragmentation and a lot of fracturing and a lot of civil war happening right now. Yeah, 3 of Cups. I'm feeling it. But there's also cause for celebration. And I think that we have to kind of Like, let me just get more information on like the right and the wrong way to express anger. And like this idea of a right and wrong way of expressing anger. Like, I'm having trouble with this. I can't really see this clearly. Yeah. It's a mountain to climb. And the Chariot. So how do we look at a situation where like Hermes earlier in this week is like, you're not really in control. And I'm like, well, I mean, not really in control, but like, you know, some of it, right? And then, you know, that being very upsetting to me, only to lead to an example of how the universe takes care of those that it loves. It loves everyone, but there are certain rules, there are certain ways that, you know, being open to inspiration, being willing to trust, like being, you know, able to interact with life, like seeking life, wanting to expand, like all these things play a part in your own emancipation. And so when we think about like expressing anger and being able to like look back at your life and being like, those people actively sabotaged my life. Absolutely. Here's the charts, here's the graphs, here's the PowerPoint presentation. Like, little room is left for questioning whether or not like that person's negligence and that person's ignorance and that person's hysteria played a role in like all of this damage to like these persons who are otherwise innocent, right? I can do that all day long. And the only thing it does is really just kind of make me feel sick and make me feel powerless and make me give up and then the venom and then the void. And so we have to kind of work with those two things at once can be true model. And when it comes to expressing anger, have places to express anger about the way that people act and the things that they do and the way that they hurt each other and the way that we've been hurt by them. Like, we do need venues of like ways of having conflict, ways of expressing anger, because otherwise we just turn on ourselves. Otherwise we just fall into a pit. Every single time I'm like in burnout, like there's a very, very strong burnout and like morbid depression are like often like, that's what happens. Like, if I'm burnt out and I can't, you know, do as I want, you know, then what happens is I become very angry and I start that, and then that anger turns in, and then that anger becomes kind of a morbid depression. So to heal my burnout quicker, and anybody who suffers from burnout, I know you know what I mean. Burnout sufferers, like, don't step into the well of grief. and it's like the well of grief is there, but in terms of like the depression that comes when you're angry and there's nothing you can do about a world that doesn't want to work with, you know, like there's nothing that we can do about the world that works against us. And when I say the world that works against us, I mean everyone. Who's in a world that works for them? Find me one person who's in a world that works for them. I guarantee you can't. If you look closely enough, not at the top, not at the bottom, I guarantee you can't find me a single person that this world works well for anyway. And so when we go into this transition of like seeing very clearly, like this world, this is not a working world, this is not sustainable, this is not going to go on, things are going to have to come to a clash, they're going to have to come to a head. We do have to identify and be able to identify like that is wrong, that behavior is unacceptable, but also understand that people are tripping on the acid of their own incoherence. And there's nothing that we can do many times to get somebody to see outside of their own like bubble of certainty. And so how do we manage with an anger where anger doesn't lead us to control? Anger doesn't lead us to getting more control. Anger doesn't lead us to an outcome where like the expression of anger is then like rewarded. So like what exactly is the expression of anger there for? The expression of anger is there to get you over the fear, right? To bring in this, anger is there in relationship to fear with the alchemist and Virgo there and the destiny. So, all right, we come into this world and we know I have a purpose. I am purpose for something. I am an answer to a prayer. Even if I don't feel that is true at a level of gnosis, I've always felt that there's an importance to my existence. Like everybody kind of, and sometimes we can be talked out of that. Sometimes we can be beaten out of it. But the thing that makes you stand up and the thing that makes you get up in the morning is going to be some little tiny seed of gnosis that says, I'm meant for something or someone or anything. I'm meant for being seen and like experienced. I'm meant to be experienced and I'm meant to experience. Like that is something that is for me. When we know that we're supposed to be engaging with life and life is supposed to be engaging with us, that's a gnosis, that's a known. the frustration and the anger that comes in around like not being given access, or having to work for access, having to perform for access, you know, the system failure, like that is writ large, is reducing everybody down to a performance-based offering of life. You get this much life based on your performance. And that assumes that the giver of life is somebody with a measuring tape and a story about stocks and graphs, about successful people and unsuccessful people related to like these countings and these numberings and these hours and these input and this output. We know that that's not it. And so what happens when we can't perform for the machine that values us or devalues us? Because that's true. This destiny here, you have a destiny, you have a purpose. Like nobody can take that from you. It belongs to you. This is what you're supposed to become. There's things that you're supposed to become, and it's true that can't be very much taken from you. But this alchemist, you know, this Virgo here, when we talk about I'm going to read this little blurb: methodological, aligned, ritualistic, efficient, insightful, healthy. Let me have some water. Discerning, witchy, subtle, pure, refined, accurate, solidarity, critical, nervous, perfectionist. We got to work with this in terms of like this perfectionist gets in the way of our destiny. This critical gets in the way of our destiny. This solitary can often, like, you know, not that solitary is bad. Some of us are meant for that part of the world, for that kind of prayer, for that kind of intuition. But this nervous system here, you know, the soul school here, your learning curve, your fulfillment, your purpose, your maturing, your experience, this whole North Star process with destiny. And there's a better way of explaining it, but we need anger. We need anger to say, all of these things came against me, and I'm not going to let it get me down. I'm not going to let it stop me. Now, like, when we think about motivation, the motivation is gone, the desire is gone, there's nothing I can do about it. But we need the anger. We need to express the anger, because the anger unexpressed actually becomes a shutdown. It becomes a system shutdown. But we have to learn that expressing anger is not about what we're like getting a desired outcome or having a certain kind of outcome or having power over. Expressing anger is about conquering fear. It's an assertion of self, about self and what self wants and what self needs and what self is going to make a way for in one way or another. It's an assertion about what can be taken and what can't be taken. It's all of the boundaries, and it's a planning and a strategic thing. Anger serves a really important purpose. When we're playing those tapes over and over and over and over and over again, what that person did had this outcome on me, and that absolutely destroyed me. I hate that person. That's a loop. That's a loop. Because it assumes that they had all the power, or that we should have had all the power, and really nobody has any power. Like that's where like we're kind of wrong. Like, but at the same time, like, we need to balance these two things in the same hand, you know, like we come in with a destiny. There are attention guides. There are people there that are meant to push us to extremes. There are ways in which we come to answer the prayer of people that don't even see that we're the answer to their prayer, and instead just go on being sick. I mean, there's so much here to negotiating between what needs to be said and expressed in rage and anger by way of like, that person is unfair. That person does terrible things. That person is hurtful, but also that person is incoherent, and they're in an acid trip. They don't know what's going on. And then we need to emancipate ourselves somehow. We need to free ourselves. We can't hold on to them in contempt. That expression of anger is about release. It's not about holding them accountable, making them pay, bringing vengeance. It's almost like we need anger, and anger has a utility, but its utility has been drafted to purposes of vengeance outside the self, when the utility of anger from within is about rising up again, is about standing up again, is about standing up for what you want, standing up for the world that you want, and standing up for the self that you want. And I know how that feels, because I'm in shutdown. Like I'm doing this reading from a place where I'm like, yeah, you know. But here we have like the Three of Cups. You know, this is about community. This is about celebration, but it's also about like, you know, being in community is looking around at the mess we're all in. And so it's like, I want to be in community. You have to be like, being angry about this is a good idea. You know, like, let's come back to this. Like, because we talk about community and like what it means. But anger and confrontation. And this is something that like we have been in tangles about. Because the hierarchy that we are in, the worldview that we are in, is all about suppressing anger. It's submitting. You have to submit. You submit to you're a soldier that submits, you're a worker that submits, you're a child to some kind of like family that you have to submit. You're having to submit to work environments. You're having to submit to conditions of, whatever punishment comes along with not being able to be in work environments. Like, all of this submission of will is this, that in and of itself, like, it ends up being like this 10 of wands when it comes to your willpower. We have only a finite amount of willpower every single day. And when all of your willpower is submitting your rage that you should have to in some way be valued by a system that values nothing anywhere at all, well, that you should somehow be like, find the right place of slavery, to have your life force siphoned into nothing but like an empty vault. These are things that we're angry about. And these are the things that we're angry about when we protest fascism and oligarchy. You want to take the life force of a nation and the creative potential of an entire people's, and you want to siphon them into tombs, like dead tombs of false like wealth in the form of material coins that literally you just live and you die and they just stay there in a vault of death, going nowhere in the way of the resources meant for like a purpose that everybody has to serve in an ecosystem that is meant to create something of consciousness. Everybody who is born of a certain type of consciousness, Homo sapiens that are born of a certain kind of consciousness, we are all purposed to a level of potential when it comes to innovation, that when our life force and our resources are stripped from us, it's like we're a strip mine. It's like we're the rainforest that's being cut down for timber. And we know it. And so this is why changes are happening. This is why we're in the transition that we're in. It's not that there is no hope. We don't just scream out in anger and then collapse into hopelessness. The purpose of anger, its very job, is not to talk ourselves out of it because we understand that so-and-so is like a horrible person and they do all these horrible things, but they're unaware of it. They don't realize. And so now we can't speak our anger. Or they do these things and we have to, put our survival. There's so many ways that it's just like so hard, to clean up this mess around what it is to communicate authentically with each other, what it is to like have a place for anger. We need a place for anger. Part of us have lost our sense of humor and our joy because we can't scream and rage about how ugly things are, because we have no place of expressing some of what we're feeling that comes through in humor. And so there's something here that with this Anima Mundi, like that everything exists for a reason, including anger, including that inner fight. My guides have been telling me to fight for myself all week. And you know what they've been saying? You need to hope. You need to have hope. You need to know that we're in charge. You need to know that it's not all on you. You need to know that we're going to get you through this. And I'm like, I have to make a PowerPoint presentation. You're offering me hope. And we know, we've been in rounds of this with me because we know how I get. And burnout is like, an especial, place with some of this stuff. But like this notion of hope and fighting for yourself. Why don't we hope? We can't. It's I'm tired, right? Why don't we hope? It's not there. Who cares? Doesn't even matter. Why don't we hope? Every time I tried, with all of my willpower, I couldn't get it with all of my willpower. None of the things I wanted, I couldn't will it into being. I tried to will it into being and it was too hard. This is this mountain lion. This is this page of wands who goes out into the world with all the hope in their heart, and they're going to get this quality of life, and they're going to get these things, and they're going to do these things, and they're going to make these things happen, and they're going to set a chart, a path, and they're going to blaze and go, and then then you find out you're on the side of a precipice of where you're on this mountain that every single step you try to take up, there's nothing holding you. There's nothing supporting the weight of what you're trying to accomplish under the mountain that you're given to climb by wherever you are on the scale of privilege or disadvantage. Like, this is for everyone, this uphill climb to get to express yourself, just to be in purpose. And so it just becomes these battles that we've either won or we've lost, but they never amount to emancipating us. They never amount to the thing that we were working for, like, ending up being the thing that we get, or if we get it, that it is what we expected. Like, this is disappointment after disappointment after disappointment, and this is system failure, and system failure makes us angry, and then we don't have a place to express our anger, so we start to blame people. Why is there system failure? Why are my efforts not working? And then we can diagnose, we can look around. Those people are doing it wrong, they're doing it wrong over there, and we can hate them, and we can go to war against them, and we want to, and we do. But how do we survive it? How do we express this anger? How do we allow for it? Because it is a mountain to climb, and still have fun, have joy in our life, still have nourishment in our life. How do we not fall into the pit of this struggle that that expressing anger seems to be associated with struggle? Expressing anger seems to be associated with fighting your way forward, fighting your way back. But what if anger and its utility is just simply, I will not accept this for myself, and I am going to change. I'm not going to let the people who have enslaved me take my ability to sing from me. I'm going to go and sing while I work. I'm not gonna let them take my voice. I'm not gonna let them take my expression. They're gonna put me in this chain gang. I'm still gonna express myself. This is something that is horrible to conceive of. You know, when we have to hold these things in our hand, two things in our hand, and one thing is like, why am I enslaved? Why do I have to be enslaved? What the hell is that? Like, who's in charge, right? Nobody's in charge. Why am I enslaved? Well, we have to be enslaved. Okay. That sucks. I don't have control over that. I don't have control over the fact that we have to be enslaved. I don't have control over the fact that we have to be in this struggle in order to get from fascism to freedom. Like, we have to be angry. We have to show up with some level of anger. But that anger can't shut us down at the level of like, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. What can I do? And now we start to sink. Or we try and then we're too tired, and then there's not enough. And that not enough signals to us that we're somehow failing. And now that darkness, that venom starts to seep in. And so being able to express anger and say, we're in an apocalypse, this sucks, and it's a famine, it's an emotional famine. To be able to express anger and say, like, the incoherence of the power structure that we have had to suffer under is no longer, like, this is not sustainable anymore. Like, we're going to talk about this and talk about this and talk about this. We're not going to, I mean, it's hard because, I mean, I'm in this boat with people who feel really tired, Ten of Wands. Tired of trying, tired of trying to find a way forward, trying to figure out something with, trying to get to a place of empowerment. When every time you turn around, there's a reason to feel disempowered. That's where the fire goes out. Where we set that fire back, where we get that fire to blaze back up, is when that rebellion. That absolutely not. I'm still going to have a party. I'm still going to celebrate this holiday. I don't care if every member of this family is mired in some, psychodrama of their own acid tripping, the long line of narcissist, covert narcissist, like triangulation. Like, we can hate the whole family and still refuse to not celebrate. And I think that's like very hard, but I think it's also essential in terms of what it is to get into this place of passion. Because being in this, this is like, everybody's mean and terrible and no good, right? I can't even express my anger. What's the point? I'm just going to hide in the middle of this mountain. And that's like, this is what happens, right? We wake up and we're starting our life and we're so excited, and we this Page of Wands, and we're gonna scale this mountain. We're gonna get what we want. We're gonna get the things that are important to us. It's gonna be glorious, right? And then what's the most that we're gonna get out of this effort? A place in this like solid, like this solitary place of extracted enough to now have to guard it for the rest of your life, or not. Or just, being stuck in the mountain because you climbed up there and now there's nothing here that you thought that you were going to get, and it's empty promises, and you don't have the strength to climb down, and this is just this Ten of Wands situation where there just doesn't seem to be a lot of options. And that option, though, with this allowance, where we allow, okay, those people did that, this situation is this, but we refuse not to shape shift, not to be able to adapt, not to step into this passion and find a way to celebrate despite what people are doing. And that's, I know how tricky that is, because that does not, you know, no part of this reading speaks of celebrate despite what people are doing by bypassing it. It has something to do with what are expressions of anger. You know, protest is an expression of anger, and protest as an expression of anger before it erupts, you know, is actually, that's a party. Before a protest becomes violent, it's a party. We know that. So these expressions of anger don't have to be violence, but we do need to find a way to have these expressions, to stand up for ourselves. We have to find a way to stand up for ourselves against the people who are going to hate us unless we adopt the illusion that they insist we all live under. Anger says, no, you do something else, I'll do something else, and I will recognize you as like rejected by me. My scepter of rejection says, like, you believe that I should come under the authority of your beliefs? Absolutely not. Now we're not in close proximity. We're not in resonance. Like, expressing that anger and drawing that boundary is not a loss. You didn't lose that person. That person didn't dislike you. That person isn't just mean. No, you looked at them and you said, I reject the way that you are operating, and I'm going to step in resonance with those who find that to be unacceptable. And now you're moving out of what would otherwise be a pit. But, you know, when it comes to celebrating holidays, you know, when it comes to celebrating life and finding such disappointment in people, part of that is the transition that we're in. We're in a major transition, and we have to be somewhat adaptable. We have to allow for this traveling. You know, the chariot, something is moving us, something is taking us somewhere. You know, we don't give up on the belief that there's hope. We just understand that we do not have the control that we want in the situation that we're in. And that the way that we participate in this is we're honest with our expression. And sometimes that honesty with that expression, when we can't find a way out, when we can't find a way to get through, when we can't find anything that is going to make a difference, we need the anger. The alchemy of the anger. We need to call in that rage and say, no, I am not going to be hiding like this. I understand. Or I am going to hide because I'm going to do something with that. Like, whatever it is, you are not this. It's at the level of empowerment with your destiny. Feeling like someone could steal your life, feeling like someone can steal your destiny, feeling like something that somebody did to you can shut you down completely. Those might be legitimate feelings, but you need anger in order to say absolutely not, you know, and that can be really hard, especially when you have dealt with rage heads, you know what I mean? Like, if you've been at the receiving end of enough of raging lunatics, you never want to express anger. You never want that to be you. You never want to see that blaze coming out of your mouth. You don't want to aim your anger at somebody who didn't earn it. And what it means to aim your anger at somebody who earned it is to aim your anger at a black hole that isn't going to even affect it. Aiming your anger at the narcissists is going to go nowhere. You're going to be the screaming one, and they're going to be like, I just don't know what it is. You're a miserable person. You know, like, that's what they do. And so, like, what does it mean to, like, have anger and understand that it's not going to be useful in aiming it at the person who deserves it. It's definitely not useful at misfiring at someone who doesn't deserve it. And but it is useful in getting you out of whatever rut, whatever shutdown. It's not that you need to wait for the desire and passion. You need to mobilize along the lines of, am I angry at something? What am I angry at? I'm angry at people, right? This depth. I have a depth of anger here, and I'm going to allow myself, you know, to rekindle my passion. So a lot of times anger, you know, gets confused in terms of this competition, and passion gets confused with competition. And so another way that, like, anger is not useful with competition. Anger is gross with competition, because this is like basically wars, you know. Anger and competition equal war, and anger and competition in a household equals war, which is why the covert narcissist is, because that covert narcissist is obsessed with competition. Where am I in proximity to power? Where is everybody else in proximity to me? How does everybody feel about me? How do they see me? What, I can see them seeing me wrong. I'm going to do these. I have to now spin a narrative on who they are and make sure that it fits this frame of, like, to aggrandize my own, like, injustice. Like, the number of ways that like we have to take anger out of the places that it doesn't belong, because anger has no place in a pissing match with people who are going to like repeat a story that isn't true until they are nailed into the grave. There's no overcoming that. But the anger comes in, you know, to say like, I'm not going to compete. I'm not competing with somebody else's version of me. I'm not going to take their version in. I'm not going to take someone's version in to my heart and let it shut me down and make me feel like I can't step out into the world and do things and like I'm not good enough. And so somebody who is competing with you, who said you're no good, or you can't make the grade, or you can't win the competitions, and therefore you have nowhere to go and like you should just shut down. Like anger is required, because that's not true. But anger doesn't help in the wrong ways. It helps in the right ways. And so this depth here with this competition, we have to sort of first kind of say like, you know, be able to even say like, not only are a lot of us angry, some of us are deeply angry, and some of us are so deeply angry that it does absolutely become what seems like a reservoir of grief. Grief is unexpressed love. And so that's angry at the people that you loved deeply. Who did you love? People that you love naturally, your parents, you can't help it. You love them whether you want to do it or not. For the first 10 years of your life, they are gods, and you can't help but love them, and they abuse it. They do the wrong thing. They throw you under the bus. This happens in so many families, it's not even funny. And in so many different ways, in so many obvious ways, and some other ways that aren't obvious. The systems fail everyone, right? And so, you know, when you think about the depth of anger that you feel because someone, you know, with a competition mindset or a competition point of view, or the world with its competition mindset or its competition point of view, or energies that said you have to learn to compete or else, and you can't be sensitive, you have to change who you are so that you can compete properly. Like, this is a system failure that like we're watching, we're participating in, we're able to like annotate and report about it. We're even able to feel this anger that we think it has to do something. The anger has to do something, or else it's not, you know. But this depth of rage, this depth of anger around competition, because it's gross, because it's anti-ecosystem, and ecosystem is what's natural and economy is what's not. This depth, you know, around this mountain and what it means for you to get out of this mountain and into the world requires you to forgive everybody who operated in competition. And that is like 90% of the population. Because nobody destroys a child for any other reason. That's the truth. There's like, nobody destroys their own life for any other reason. Like, I was talking to my ancestors and I was so mad. I'm so mad at my father right now. I'm like, it's Father's Day, I think, this Sunday, this enrichment. Oh, look at that. You know, our guides never like keep track of the holidays the way that I wish that they would. But here we are in like this Father's Day reading. And I don't know if we have daddy issues in here, but we must have daddy issues. But we also have like, you know, other issues too. Like, there's a lot of issues. We have evil mommy issues, and every collective has their share of that. But all narcissism, covert narcissism or otherwise, and a narcissist is just blind. I hate that term because it just means somebody who is completely blind, somebody who has abandoned themselves so completely for a role and for a performance that they literally have no capacity to be in touch with themselves in any way, shape, or form, and they're driven like a car by whatever has an agenda related to like meeting those marks and upholding that system of oppression. And so like people who self-abandon do so at the level of competition, because again, competition is an incoherent thing in an ecosystem. And so in order to like make the grade, you know, we have to forgive the fact that when we look at the family structures and the family systems, the siblings pitted against each other, you know, the parents pitted against each other, and everybody, you know, put into this subservient hellhole of a situation. And then like those that don't have that structure having to like accommodate, like all of the ways in which the competition that has been forced on you has made you feel like you're worth something or worthless. That we need to be angry about that. We need to be angry about the people who treated you wrong because they were jealous. We need to be angry about the people who, you know, hurt other people because they want, you know, they have to be right. You know, we have to be angry about the people who hoard. We have to be angry about all of the vices. We have to find a way of being angry about these things, but not in the wrong way. The wrong way to use anger is at someone. The right way to use anger is I refuse. Like anger used internally as a fuel that says, I'm not going to accept that, I'm not going to accept that, and I'm going to go and I'm going to go the distance on that because that's what I want for myself. That's who I want to be. And I don't care what anybody thinks, and I don't care what anybody says, and I don't care how anyone looks at me. Anger is necessary if you're going to, I'm going to go and make a, I'm going to make an art project, and I'm going to make this art project to communicate from that place that I am working with the guides, and they're channeling through that healing for myself through this art, through this communication. And I don't give a shit what people do with it when I put it out there, because I'm looking to make friends. I'm looking to connect with people who are like me. And so anybody who rejects it, anybody who thinks it's cringe, I don't care. That anger, I don't give a damn. That's where the anger is useful. The anger is useful in terms of I hate the people that live around here, but I'm still gonna show up and buy the bread at that like bread stand, whatever. It's I don't care. I don't care. They can't bully me. Their position can't shut me down. Their projection on me can't make me feel like I'm crap and I'm going to agree with their projection. Like all of the things that happen in all of the cesspool that is a world of competition here with the West competition, that has to be this mess, of like, we don't even know what an ecosystem is. We only know what the economy is, and we only know what it is to be hurt by it. We only know what it is to be treated like we don't, like we have no purpose except the purpose that is ascribed by like the workforce. That's disgusting. That's disgusting. That's not your purpose. Your purpose isn't your labor. Never has your purpose ever been to be a slave and a laborer for some idiot who has the resources to misuse them. Never has that been it. That's an anger point. And so, anger comes in when we're afraid to show up. We're afraid to be perceived. Anger comes in and says, no, like I have a purpose, and none of this programming, none of this conditioning is going to keep me from it. I don't care. I'm not going to let it. I refuse. I refuse to not believe that that there's life for me. I refuse to not believe that there's love for me. I don't care what it looks like. I'm not going to let those things that I can point to and say that person was wrong, that person was wrong, that whole group was wrong, that entire organization was wrong, that whole infrastructure is wrong, that whole system is wrong, but I'm still going to have a party. I'm still going to celebrate. I'm still going to have a good time. I'm still going to find a way because I refuse to be killed by that. That's what anger is for. Anger is really not good in an argument. Anger can be a boundary that you set. Step back. Do not trespass my personal space. That can be anger that's useful in an argument. The worst travesty, where the most, I think that like we're taught to shut down this faculty of fear to anger, because fear is overcome by anger. Fear is supposed to alert you that it's time to be angry. When fear shows up, you need to be on high alert. You need to be ready to fight. You need to be ready to be angry. Codependence with fear is just a ton of anxiety. Fear is only there as an alert. It's only there as a message. Fear is a message, but it's not a companion. And so when we think about, and my voice is going, when we think about like this need to express some anger, everybody said that I'm weird. Okay, like, and now, like, and that may be true, and they may not understand you, and they may not have the right picture for you. You might be unclassifiable. When I asked Chat GTP like what kind of, like, how would they classify me, and they were like, unclassifiable. You probably are unclassifiable. If you're in this collective, you're probably unclassifiable. Does that make you like a bad thing? No, that's an amazing thing. That is that you're an anomaly. You're something that confounds the system. But being unclassifiable to people who can only operate in categories and classifying, that's the competition. You need to be angry and not let that hurt you. And like, and I know it hurts you, and we're not saying that, like, we're not trying to take that away, but the way that it can control you, be angry enough to not let it control you. When it seeks to control you, when you feel like it's going to control you because of the fear that is being imposed by a bully, that anger says absolutely not. And sometimes you have to be strategic about it. Like, I've been angry at the bullies of the Christian nationalist rurals this entire time. And I've been, you know, and I'm at a point where I'm like so happy to leave. Sorry, that was a gross slurp. I have to find a way to like drink water in the middle of but like, you know, like, I'm going to fly away as fast as you possibly can. And this will have been like such a strength training. I'm going to be like invincibly strong after what it means to like be in such an area that is so confrontational. But sometimes there's some strategy in saying like, these people are deranged. My anger at them is only just going to go and fuel their team sport like delusions. I'm not going to participate, but I'm going to be angry enough to leave. So you see the utility of anger? Angry enough to leave a bad situation. Angry enough to make plans to get yourself out of it. Angry enough to not accept this as operating as usual. Angry enough to look at the things that have hurt you and to find a way to express that anger. Because you're not going to get, you know, I think that where vengeance comes in, or when some of the loops of you know, come in, is when we are going to that person and we're like, we want you to understand this and apologize. That's never going to happen. You know, anger at somebody who wants to stay blind, who is blind, is never going to get you anywhere. But that anger still needs to be expressed. We need to find a way for you to express that these people are horrible, no good, terrible. Well, we understand that they're also just failures in the system. That's a failure, that everybody is simultaneously innocent. But what does it mean to express anger properly? 5 lives to live. Celebration, acceptance, and change. With breaking cycles. That's a good, I like that. So stepping into ecosystem is stepping out of competition. Competition is, you know, that goes all the way back to envy. All of these things, you know, they have purposes. There's reasons for them. But I want us to look at this notion of like, why do we, how do we use anger properly? How do we engage with our anger properly? Anger is when we can't stay stuck anymore. I can't stand it anymore. I can't tolerate this anymore. Something needs to give. Something needs to give is this whole astrological moment in time that we're all in one way or another. So what has to give? You know, you can't make the people around you see things straight. And that anger is there to get you to move. And so when I was talking to Hermes about ecosystem versus economy, and I was talking about ecosystem is the nature of man and economy is nature. And I was saying, you know, I said, listen, for what it's worth, like we see nature and we see nature do things like famine, you know, like we see famine, you know what I mean? Famine, genocide, famine, tomato, like what are we doing here? Like, it's kind of understandable that there's like a little bit of apprehension. And Hermes was like, no, that's not it. And I said, what? Hermes says, with an ecosystem, everything is communication. With that primal worldview, everything is communication. And so when the goddess mother says famine, it means move. It means get up, pack your stuff, and go to another location, because that famine is the precursor to this. Like, she showed me he was showing me this like thing of the Mother Earth, like her like explosion of like lava, that the mother isn't doing things incoherently. That the nature of man is incoherent. The nature of man is incoherent. It says, we're going to build here, we're going to stay here, and if the food runs out, we're going to conquer those people and we're going to import their food and we're going to starve them so that we can eat. That's the famine that like the nature of man brings. But the nature of nature brings a famine that says, get off this land. I'm not going. The weather is changing here. You're not supposed to stay here. Not only are you supposed to move because I'm going to have to explode this whole area with fire because it needs to have the seedlings, but you also are meant to move over to that other tribe and co-create with them, because the innovation between what I've been developing with them and what I've been developing with you means that you need to listen, see that there's no food here, and get up and move. Or you need to be, you know, interacting with the psychic space and dreaming and making a storehouse. I mean, like you have the Bible, the when we think about the primal worldview, we're thinking about co-creation. And then there's a Bible story about Joseph during the famine was getting psychic visions that he was sharing with the king to put enough food in the storehouses to get through the famine. That's another way that is ecosystem, because somebody who is ecosystem purposed for that psychic vision can help a community work with what it means to like overcome certain like natural sort of things. But so the ecosystem is either telling the people to leave because there's going to be explosion, or you have people who are purposed for psychic vision that have a place here, and this is what they're for. Whatever it is, the ecosystem is communicating nurture, and the economy is communicating domination and control and extraction. And so when we are angry and we're like, no, I have a purpose, F you. I have a purpose, F you. Anybody who doesn't think that you are of value, I have a purpose. I'm an answer to prayer. F you for not seeing it. F you for not appreciating it. F you for not taking what the mother and the ecosystem has offered. I'm gonna, and this is also biblical, I'm gonna pick up my shoes, I'm gonna knock the dust off, and I'm going to listen to the ecosystem that says there's nothing for you here, it's time to move. Sometimes that's very clear, by way of the deprivation and by way of what's not there. And so then we have to stop and we have to say, wait a minute, this anger is telling me something. This anger is giving me fuel. This anger is saying they're not going to give me what I need. I can knock on this door from now until the end of time, and I'm not going to get an ounce of sense out of that brain, because that brain is tripping so hard on the acid of supremacy. It's so indoctrinated with the loops of tyranny that's Mother Nature ecosystem is saying anger. It's not about overcoming them. It's not about fighting them. It's about, I will not tolerate this. I'm standing up for myself, and if I am outnumbered, I am going to follow, this anger into a better place for myself, And so this 5 lives to live, when we think about if you had 5 imaginary lives to live, what would you do and be like in each one of them? What are we supposed to do with anger? Fear says, hey, something's amiss. We have a problem. The systems are not doing what they're supposed to. Fear says, like, you're not supposed to be a laborer. And fear says, like, that person's trying to trespass you. And fear is like very much an instructive thing, right? Fear, like the presence of fear is something that gives you cause to act in one way or another. And even if it's like confused, like, being stuck in traffic and like, oh, in the modern world, we're used to running away from the lions. We're used to running from the lions. And that's why we have the stress conditions that we have, because now we just have to sit in the car in traffic. And so none of that fight or flight has someplace to go. No, sitting in a car in traffic is unnatural, right? That is an unnatural condition caused by an economy of systems that is extracting in a way that is incoherent, because the people who are purposed on this earth for proper, Hecatean road design are working in a factory somewhere, and nothing works right. Nothing's operating in a coherence. Everybody's struggling in one way or another. That anger is there to say, enough is enough. I'm gonna change. I'm gonna bring in change. I don't want to be in traffic for 2 hours every day. If I'm in traffic for 2 hours every day, and it's causing me to just deteriorate into misfiring rage and a suppression of the life that I want to live, that I'm spent instead of living in a little bubble. That anger is for a reason. It's supposed to make you act. And that action that you take is for yourself. It's not against somebody necessarily. When we take action against the systems, we get together and we express our anger. This is unacceptable. What are we going to do about it? Who's in charge? Where are people going to help? We're all going to help by what? Holding what we can hold, reaching what we can reach. Now our anger is mobilized, but it's a group. When you're in a situation where you're angry every single day because somebody is mistreating you, that anger needs to mobilize your plan to remove yourself from a situation where you're being mistreated. It's not to be explained away. And that's why we have to be kind of careful, because like, you know, there is something to be said for like, you know, tolerance and working with anger in the proper way, where we can hold two things in the same hand. This person's violent and this person's a broken child. But you are going to, if you're walking around with fear, if fear is following you everywhere you go, that anger comes up to say, I'm not going to live in fear. This is unacceptable. I can see that it's because of this other reason, and I don't care. I'm still going, I'm angry enough to do something about it for myself. And so anger is always about you as a tool, you know, always about how you can move yourself, how you can get yourself going. And so this 5 lives to live is saying, you know, it's like when you feel stuck, now we have to stop and we have to say, okay, how can we use this anger as fuel? I'm not going to stay here, but I don't know where I'm going to go, and I feel stuck. Well, think about all of the lives that you can be living. You're living in multiple dimensions, doing multiple things based on multiple decisions that you have made. This is an interdimensional reality. And when we align with a timeline or another timeline, it's the same thing as aligning with one goal or another. But first we have to make that goal. We have to have hope. We have to begin to engage with the alchemy of our own imagination when it comes to, this is unacceptable. I am angry. I need to change. These are the changes that are needed in order for me to live that life that I want. And this place that I'm in that is shut down because I've galvanized my efforts before. I've tried before. I've been angry before. It's still necessary. Like, you know, because it's this way in which like that blaze is a part of desire, that blaze is a part of passion, that blaze is a part of feeling alive and meeting life with life. And so in some ways, yeah, the repetition of effort and disappointment in an economy does put us into places where we can't compete with this horrible world. You know, we're just this is what we can do. This is the best we can do. We tried our best. There's nothing else. We can't compete with what it means to, you know, like have to contend with a sickness, or have to contend with cruelty, or have to contend with, you know, poverty, like all the things that we have to contend with. That creativity, you know, there's an acceptance that says like, okay, I'm like, this is a funny thing, you know, I'm walking with fear enough that I know I need anger. I know I need anger because this is not working. This is not going to be sustainable. Change is required. In order to have fuel for that change, I need to be able to envision something that I want. In order to envision something that I want, I have to bump up. I have to bump up against the times when I've wanted something and it's been blocked by horrible things that I still am angry about, that I still need to express that anger over, because that expression of anger needs to empower you somehow. Not by like you taking control or somebody agreeing with you, but that expression of anger has to go to say, I know that I was wronged, but I'm not going to let that define me. And I'm gonna, but that also means that you have to define yourself and define what you're capable of. And sometimes this is encountering grief, but moving through it with like grasping at something that says like, I deserve this kind of life. There's an exercise that we can all do that I think is good, which is take a 5-year-old picture of yourself at 5 years old, a school picture, 5 or 6 years old. Find yourself a picture of yourself 5, 6 years old, a school picture. Nobody is going to give that kid what they owe, what that kid is owed but you. That 5-year-old child is not going to get the life that they deserve from anybody but you. At this point, that's true. It's not fair. We can hold that in our hand. It's not fair that the life that kid deserved, that required the investment of others, got no investment from others. That can hurt, and we can say it. Like, listen, I needed these people to be invested in me in order to feel strong in these ways, and now I have an uphill battle, and I'm angry, and I'm just gonna, you know, stay at this place of defeat. But that anger, when you express it, you know, that person shouldn't have done that. That person shouldn't have done that. But I did this, and I did this, and I did that. We forget all the times we stood up for ourselves. We forget what that meant. We forget the ways that pivoted us. And when we didn't stand up for ourselves, we can work with it. You know, it's important to know that, like, that 5 lives to live. What is the life that you're living right now? What is the life that you want to be living? What's it going to take to get there? What do you need to be angry about in order to not accept whatever it is that is keeping you from change, keeping you from feeling like you can change? Because this celebration says there's a mess to clean up, but there's celebration in the process of cleaning up that mess. There's connecting and working together and figuring it out. There's being angry in community is we all know what it is to be angry in community because it feels like a team sport. We all know what it is to be angry in community. It's kind of fun. It's kind of a party. It's kind of a celebration. A celebration of we're not going to take it anymore. A celebration of whatever it takes, we're in this together, we're going to try. You know, does it often like end up in a Three of Pentacles, like, you know, the tower is down and what was holding us together now has to turn into like communal work to figure it all out? Yeah. But the shapeshifter here in terms of passion, when we become rigid, I can't move. I can't, this rigidity, there's a rigidity around passion. And I have it personally. Like, so I am, like constantly just like looking at the landscape and being like, there's nothing here for me. There's nothing here for me. There's nobody, you know, nothing, you know, nothing's going to happen. And I'm rigid. And so there's no passion coming in because there's no motivation coming in because I'm rigid about what is for me and what's not for me. You know, what's going to work and what's not going to work. And a lot of that rigidity is because I hate people, right? And like, listen, hey, we're going to go into honesty with anger. I don't hate people as in like, I can't, yeah. I love everyone that I interact with most of the time. It's weird. I get an intimacy in terms of the psychic, you know, interaction. I also, even when it's not a psychic interaction, like do feel a genuine and true love for all of you, especially when I'm at this table, especially when I'm doing this work. There's a lot of love in me. But when I like watch the news, right? When I am like looking at like a group, you know, in like celebrating like, I don't know, something in a way that like I've just been in a very Christian nationalist place. Celebrating slavery, you know, the Confederate flag flying from the truck. Like, you know, that's when I hate people. That's when I hate them, you know, like that's when I feel this hate. This is when I feel this misanthropic kind of a feeling. And that's a rigidity that kind of keeps me from the passion, that has me showing up, you know, in ways that like, yeah, I might not be accepted by these people. They may not come to an agreement about, you know, the things that I think and the things that they think. But the truth, if I'm honest about, you know, my experience in Texas, which is like a lot of Christian nationalists, is that I have found really cool people at the margins. And by being a representative of somebody who is not this place, I then make those that live in the margins feel that there is a place of visibility for those that are outside of compliance. And so like my expression of an insistence, I insist that I get to live. I insist that I get to express myself. And I insist that I will, if I'm not safe, find a place where I can safely be all of these things or do all these things or find ways to safely do all of these things. That anger has to come in. And it's really hard because without the anger, we get rigid. We get rigid about what's possible. And again, like a lot of times when we do these readings, like we get that, like we all know that we have to express our anger. We all understand that it doesn't do anything when we express it at somebody who can't listen. It doesn't do anything when we express it, like, you know, where it just misfires, it explodes out of us, and there's, you know, because it's been repressed or there hasn't been a way to properly communicate it. There's a lot of us that don't know who to communicate or how to communicate anger properly because it feels like it's always making people uncomfortable. But it's there anger is there to overcome fear. And I think that we've gotten this before. It's like feeling very familiar to me. But like anger is there to overcome fear. And a lot of us are so afraid. A lot of us are so afraid with the South Node. There will not be anxiety about trouble. Fear, you know, the miracle that happened where and for those of you that don't know, there was a puppy. I picked it up off the side of the road. It was emaciated. It was starving. And I had very little time, but it was covered in fleas and ticks, but it was a whole like harrowing thing of like picking up the puppy, feeding the puppy, finding out, calling animal places and finding out what it means to even find a puppy, like what it means to even try to connect with the right place for the puppy to go. Going into, but my guides guided me, you know, at going into the store, talking to someone who was talking to somebody who knows a couple that was looking for a puppy, calling, you know, the couple was right there. Actually, it was like, right, everything, here, put it this way. Everything went perfectly. I was talking to somebody, like I picked up the puppy, I fed it, I went to get supplies, I went to a store. At the store, I was talking to the person behind the counter about the puppy needs a home. Oh my gosh, what I'm gonna do. I have too many animals. I don't know where to go. And then the couple behind me is looking for a puppy. That was like a perfect emancipation. And that puppy found a home, and it's never going to be hungry again. And it's like a home that was so good, even I couldn't have done this in my wildest dreams. That was the whole situation that happened. Every single juncture of that, like of that whole experience of like, I see a puppy, I don't know what to do, I'm gonna pick it up, I'm not gonna leave it, that's not the kind of person I am, you know. Now what do? I don't know what to do. Like every single point of like this puppy and the ecosystem of what was involved in saving its life, at every point I could have chosen fear and failed that mission. That doesn't mean that the ecosystem wouldn't have provided somebody else would have been right behind me. But fear is the thing that shuts us down. It makes us unable to even, like, it sometimes it just keeps us in vices. It, you know, it chains us. It brings us into bitter and angry places, because when that fear is there, and there's and there's anger there, and there's powerlessness there, and there's no way to express it, and like this kind of mounts, and it shuts us down. And so anger, and like the proper use of anger, is like allowing for, like, you know, a sort of just recognizing this middle of the mountain place that I'm in is here for a reason, and I have to deal with it, and I don't know what it is, but I am angry, and I'm going to express that anger. And usually that expression of anger leads to some form of acceptance around change, an allowance around change. And to change, I need not to be rigid with the shapeshifter here, and in order to not be rigid, I have to think about what other kind of life I can live, and let that anger fuel that new direction, and allow for a shape-shifting of vision around even what I want, even what's for me after these experiences. Begin to sort of integrate, like, you know, what were the limitations? What were the limitations telling me? What does it mean to break these cycles? How do I forgive a world of competition and all of the evil that has wrought? How do we forgive an economy and all of the evil that has wrought, and still feel like that we can be met and loved and cared for in an ecosystem? The economy has been the only story that we've been given. We've been given that story for a long time. We can't be met with the economy. We can be met with an ecosystem. We don't even know what it looks like. We need to have an anger, you know, instead of just like, well, we're stuck with the economy and we can't do anything about it. Instead, it's like, no, I'm not going to be stuck with the economy. I'm going to figure out what ecosystem is. I'm going to use anger to keep everyone from shutting down what it is that I want to say and how I want to say it. I'm going to let anger fuel what it means for me to show up despite what anybody does or doesn't do about it. I'm going to use anger to show up and use my voice and put it someplace, no matter whether somebody responds to it or they don't respond to it. I don't care. That anger, I'm not going to let it stop me. That's what that anger is for. I'm not going to be rigid about what I think, that the world's just a terrible place and everybody in it is no good. It's easy. That's the easiest way. That's the easiest way out right there. That's the most obvious thing in the world. The most obvious thing in the world is this world is no good and everybody sucks. That literally is the billboard that is like plastered everywhere. It takes a level of refusal to box in humanity that way. I refuse to believe that all of these people are deserving of an incident. Oh God, I'm so angry. Oh my God. Do you hear this? Do you hear this anger? But it comes like, it comes from not being able to express it. It comes from not being able to express it. And I don't even have the proper answer, you know, like I really don't even have the right way to like address this, other than to say, you know, what I'm seeing here with transformation, like nobody can take your destiny. You're meant to be empowered through it. This, like learning that 10 of Wands, Page of Wands is the experience that literally trying your hardest up a cliff that is designed to defeat you, and then having to like wear all of the battles on your back, won or lost. That is where we're transitioning out of, and that's economy. But we can't build a future without hope. We can't even build our own future without hope. And we can't access hope without some level of dreams about what life could be, what our life could be. And every single time we think about what could be or what life could be, we bump up against hurt, where anger needs to be expressed. Because how many of you think something hopeful? You know, you feel hopeful about, you know, this new avenue of expression and these energies and that energy and these people and that person. You're hopeful, right? And then, but your eyes are peeled. You are keen. You are looking for any sign of imperfection. Some of us, you know, like, and that's something that like is because of fear. And then fear, the first sign that like that person's going to annoy me, right? The first time we see somebody that might, you know, be in opposition to like our peace for whatever reason, that fear says, oh, now shut down, shut the doors, batten up the hatches. I'm not going to submit. I'm not going to subject myself to that person who might annoy me, and I can't even be around that. And so this isn't for me. I don't get it. It's not, that idiot is ruining it for everybody. Nobody gets anything now. This is the way that the world goes. Or I'm not going to let that person stop me. I'm going to find a way to build strength and tolerance in our differences. Or I'm going to find a way to address these differences. Or in addressing those differences, if there is strength to be built in what it means to address those differences. Because sometimes our differences make us both stronger and make us best friends when we're not afraid to express anger in the right way. And it's tricky, and I can hear it getting jarbled even with this message. Because we have, I mean, anger has kind of come up, right? Like, and it's just been so hard to kind of sit with. And so I know for me, a lot of the anger that's coming up is foundational. It is showing me things. It is alerting me to things. I am learning things from it. I am learning things about infrastructures, or, you know, and it's all because I'm here. It's all because right here I'm purposed to observe, but I'm also, you know, using this anger. I'm making notes. I'm thinking about things I want to say. I'm thinking about things that I want to express. I'm thinking about, you know, what it means to allow this anger to fuel not only me leaving and going somewhere else, but it's also going to fuel what it means for me to express what was wrong, why it was wrong, how it was wrong. And that's not purely diagnostic. I can understand that the people that don't know that they're wrong, but still find a way to express it so that those on the margins can hear that expression. So like anger, you know, it's anger is about expressing it and expressing it right, not necessarily expressing it with the outcome that you're going to get control or that you're going to, you know, get the justice that you expect, but expressing it maybe not for the people that harmed you, but for the people who are in solidarity with you against what it means to be harmed by that. We express the anger, but we don't shut down when expressing the anger only hurts us because we're aiming it at the person who wanted to see the anger, wanted to hurt us, wanted to feel some like power jolly off of like whatever that means. And what does it mean to talk about the fact that there's a lot of people who like do terrible things? You know, like I didn't really want to go into this subject, but pierce the veil, move beyond illusion. And ancestral alchemy, conjure your legacy. You are purposed. You have a legacy. You have a destiny of empowerment. And we have to move beyond this illusion that we are in some rigid position where we can't have passion and we can't have hope because the world is falling apart and there's nothing we can do about it. You know, the biggest message this week that I got from Hermes is that your guides can orchestrate everything for you in terms of putting you in the right place for the right opportunity at the right time. The only thing that can mess that up is fear. And what does the fear look like? Fear looks like, I'm not even going to bother. I'm not even going to try. I'm too afraid. I can't help it. There's nothing I can do about it. That might be true, but that's because anger then is needed. And I don't care. And I'm angry enough to just push through. I don't care. I'm scared and I'm angry. The anger is a lot of times like will give you the ability to move through something that you're afraid of. And then you walk out on the other end of it with a bit of a, you know, it's a little bit victorious. That's where that celebration comes in. When we vindicate fear with anger, it's a cause for celebration. It's an experience of strength every single time. Does it lead us to a favorable outcome in terms of approval? Approval in a system that all the approval relates to like adhering to the no, we're going to express anger. I don't get my approval from that system. I get my approval from the people that I tell this story to and say, I said this and I said that and this is what happened. And this is the approval that comes in. We have to think about this. This is kind of hard to untangle. Even in this reading, I think we've got like a little bit of information on what the breaking the cycles around anger and suppression is. Because again, we have to find a way to express it without dehumanizing the people that we are expressing anger about. We have to. And I don't know how to do that. I get wrapped up in like such rage, such anger, and nowhere to put it. Because I know that my anger is not going to be vindicated in the revelation of those who will go to their grave nurturing a delusion that hurts as many people as they possibly, like, can hurt without ever realizing that that's what they're doing. That doesn't even need to, like, this is the way in which we're not bypassing, and we're not sort of becoming angry people, and we're not sort of navel gazing and going over and over and over again and reporting on those that like treated us unfairly. But we are piercing the veil on how much fear is in the driver's seat. We're piercing the veil on how much fear is dictating. We're piercing the veil on how much fear can threaten our capacity to hope for anything. And when we feel that fear, it doesn't always feel like fear as in like there's a predator in the room, because that's a very real kind of like spooky feeling. Sometimes the fear is that you're just convinced that like there can be no hope. And since the fear is that there can be no hope, you're just going to go with it. Like sometimes we align with fear in a way that says like, I'm afraid someone's going to be mean to me. I'm just going to agree with the fear that the person's going to be mean to me, and I'm not going to go. I'm going to agree with the fear, and I'm not going to even bother. That's a type of way that fear expressed that is actually really sneaky. I'm not even going to hope for love because I don't believe that it's there. I'm afraid it's not there, so I'm not even going to try. And so when we have that's usually because there's a lot of pain. There's some anger to express. I feel this way because this happened, that happened, those people, that expectation, that indoctrination, that horrible person, those energies. We express the anger, and then we think about, well, how can I now take this anger and not let and let that anger be behind an effort that says, I'm not going to let this take me down. I'm not going to let all of those things that I'm angry about take this other thing that I want from me. I'm not going to let all of these things that I'm angry about tell me this thing about myself that isn't true. I'm not going to internalize these things that I'm angry about. I'm going to scream them into the air if I have to. And then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to make the changes that I need to get myself away from the sources of things that are intolerable, to contribute in groups, in expressing group anger that ends up being like a protest or a celebration in that way. Soapbox, organizing. That's a healthy way to, express anger. Art, is a really when you express anger in your art, other people can have justification in their anger and their art and join you. Like joint anger is team sports, kind of. And that can get way out of hand and tribal and us and them and we are better than you're better and supremacy wars. But when we actually can stop at the team sport, taking it outside of the arena of what needs to be expressed at the heart level, and we can find ways to express the anger so that it's the passion, it's the fire. Because when we don't have access to desire anymore, when we don't have access to inspiration anymore, when we don't have fire moving in our body, burning things away and giving us desire, like when there's no fire, when there is no fire, then what we recognize, we pierce the veil and we say, oh my gosh, all of this shutdown, it's because there was no place to put all this anger, and I just internalized it as powerlessness, and then I agreed with the fear that I am powerless. It's tricky. This is so hard, but this is where I want to leave it, because I kind of want us to start talking about this. I want us to start having conversations about it, not to disrupt ourselves, but to acknowledge that there is disruption, that the disruption's already there, that when we have dishonest harmony, that's not uplifting. But at the same time, what is uplifting is some form of how do we cope with this anger? How do we express this anger? What does it even mean to use it as a tool? And when we can kind of get a grip on that, we can kind of talk about it, because I don't have all of the answers. I know that. I'm struggling with anger. I live around people who I really have a hard time with. They believe that I hear people say things like, they should just firebomb Gaza and get it all done in one time, because the Bible says, this is what the red heifer, you know what I mean? I hear people say these things. I mean, of course I can't, look at them and see the innocent child who's indoctrinated and brainwashed. I can't. I just see the monster who has no connection to the lives that he's speaking about, and that makes him a monster, and that incoherence, you know what I mean? And so like, what do we do about this? How do you guys handle this? Because I was working with Hermes, and I was like, I want to do something uplifting. And he's like, you know what? Actually, you're not going to be able to feel joy. You're not going to feel an ounce of anything uplifting. And you're just going to be in this position of burnout, you know, without any sustenance, until you find a way to allow that blaze, you know, of anger to express itself, and not in a million different ways, but in the way that it needs to express. And so let's begin to talk about this, because I'm not the only one, you know, sort of living in a world right now that like is anger inducing. I'm not the only one living in a world that is anger inducing. So there is hope. There's a lot of hope. Our ancestors want to offer us that hope. They want to get us out of the dark spaces that we're in. They want to get us out of the rigid shutdown that we find ourselves, the disempowered, you know, against the collapse of everything. They want to help us, you know, and give us like miraculous ways in which they can put us into the right places at the right times. But for us to be able to, divine intervention, again, requires our participation in the right way. Divine intervention, it requires faith and hope, and it requires an ability to leave whatever feels like there's no hope and you have no help and there's nothing that you can do. You need divine intervention. That divine intervention kind of depends on us being receptive. We can only be receptive when we aren't certain, and we can only be uncertain when we're not perpetually afraid, and we can only not be perpetually afraid when we can find a way to not have that anger just be internalized, because there's no place to really put it. So when I told Hermes, you know, we need to be lifted up, we need to be lifted up, Hermes was like, you need to be anger. You need to get that anger out of the way so that you can get lifted up. Anger is blocking your joy. Some of that is proximity to angering issues, and some of it is not having a way to express it, and some of it is, you know, on and on and on and on. Because that's this whole reading. But I hope that this helps, and I hope that this is a place where we can kind of begin some discussions about managing anger, because it's everywhere. You know, injustice is everywhere. Everywhere there is competition, you know, and it's ugly, you know. Everywhere that there is a structure that is like, you know, all about extraction, that's what we're living through. All these things falling down, all of these things, needs not met. Let's talk about breaking some of these cycles about not figuring out the proper technology around anger. Let's figure out the proper technology around anger. And our hint is that anger is always there to emancipate us from fear. So let's leave it there, and I will talk to you again soon.